Hello. I have not made a video for a very long time. I have been busy with this and that and that and this. So anyway, I wanted to make an estj video. I have not thus far. Estjs are the most different from an INFJ. Obviously this is a video of estjs and INFJs because I'm INFJ. So what I would start out with saying is just like the different strategies that I have learned to deal with estjs. I actually know an INFP who grew up having an estj brother, an ENTJ father, an ENTP brother. So she definitely goes pretty far in the direction of estj a lot of times. So I have had kind of ample practice in that sense. And I've known, some other estjs as well. So the main thing that you have to keep in mind with the estj being an INFJ is that they have TE for the very first function. So TE is basically what you think, and it has to do with status. It has to do with doing things in a certain order, like a sequence, including, people. It has to do with status, also, as I just said. So as an INFJ, what you have to do, and this is not necessarily good advice for some other type, is just say whatever you're thinking when you're around them. We have the natural tendency to just, hold back and analyze everything and really think things through and everything before we ever say anything. So like by the time we say it, it's pretty concentrated and really thought out, and that is definitely what we think. We considered all the other perspectives and everything. But with an ESTJ, they almost don't have NI. So what does this mean? This means that they almost entirely deal in the tangible world. They are not picking up anything underneath the surface, almost nothing. They're not dealing in subtleties at all, and that is where we're at. So we can be giving out pretty strong signals to them. That's somebody that was utilizing their NI at least a little bit would be able to pick up on, but it's just going to go entirely over their heads. They're not even going to notice that you even said anything, much less what it is that you said. What they're using to try to give you form and substance is they're trying to pick up on what you think. They are a thinker, and TE is their very first function, and so that is how they experience people, and that is how they will really relate to people, is in what they think. So what you have to do is you have to just say whatever you're thinking. Now this might not be good advice for another type, but for an INFJ, just because we have such a natural inclination to not say what we're thinking. If I say whatever you think, it's going to come out about right. But I know that it feels childlike and or even insulting to us, like we're going to be insulting if we do this. But literally, this is how they are putting out their TE radar to try to figure out what you're about. And since we almost don't have TE, we're not giving off those vibes, and we are not saying what we're thinking either. They have nothing to go on, and the problem that causes with the ESTJ is they can be, and this can be in a good sense or a bad sense, they can be like a bulldozer pretty much. And so if they put out their radar using their TE and they're not picking up anything, which they're not going to unless we actually make some kind of effort in another direction, they're literally going to think there's nothing there, and they're just going to like bulldoze right over you because they literally do not perceive anything. So you have to go out and meet them and say what you're thinking. And there's another aspect to this as well, and that is that they have SE for their sixth function, which means, and I've read that possibly your entire, cognitive operating system is based upon your sixth function. And SE has to do with being assertive and or assertive or aggressive, And so this is a huge part of what an ESTJ is. And, it has good aspects and bad aspects. But again, that goes to the whole bulldozer thing. If you don't show some assertiveness at the very beginning with them, forget it, it's over. And that's just the way it is. And another strategy that, there's something else that I was going to say here. What was it? Well, anyway, another strategy that you can use with them if they're like trying to dig in too much or whatever is that for their third function, they have NE. NE is extroverted thinking, and it has to do with options a lot. So people that have NE fairly strongly, and they have it for their third function, can be distracted very easily. So if they're trying to be too pushy, just like, and I think it probably comes a lot easier for me being an INFJ 7 than it would be for maybe a typical INFJ, but because 7 has any light tendencies. But just change the subject, just change it, like no warning or anything. Just bring up some other subject and just keep changing subjects, and they'll be distracted and they'll forget whatever it was that they were trying to dig into about. So I think that, well, TE, as I mentioned already, it has to do with status. And I might go so far as to say, and this can be, again, a weakness or a strength, with the ESTJ can definitely be a weakness, which is why I'm mentioning it. But INFJs, you might say that we are expert at hiding our status. And we're good at hiding what we're good at. We're good at hiding particularly good things about ourselves. And since the ESTJ basically totally deals in this world in some way or the other, and I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, it can be both. But so again, this is something that is difficult to deal with ESTJs, because again, they're trying to cast about to find out find out about you and categorize you. That's kind of what TE does, it categorizes. And so the sooner that you can stick some things out there, it doesn't have to be extensive, but just give their NE and their TE something to work with, then the easier that is going to be for you. And INFJs are really expert at being ambiguous. So one thing that I have learned is that you have to, and it particularly comes into play with like an ESTJ, since they almost don't have the NI, but they are very, or can be, is that if they say something or do something that is a problem, the thing that happens with an INFJ is, since we have SE that is either almost not there or there too much, we are a little bit limited, because it's like this. Either we have to catch it right away, something, if they're doing something, when, for it to be appropriate, with the almost not there. Like I said, SE is like assertiveness or aggressive, slash. We'll just say it's assertive here. So you have to either catch something right away when the almost not there is appropriate, or you have to wait until it's become a really huge problem when being over the top is again appropriate. In between, you're not going to be appropriate. So basically what you have to do is you have to do something right away. If there's something, just do something ambiguous. But make sure you do something. But do something ambiguous. And we're really good at that. So play to that strength and say something that can be taken either as polite or friendly and it doesn't mean anything, or I see you, you better watch it. So, and in that way, if they are trying to do something and they just keep on trying to ramp it up, you can keep on ramping up your thing, because you can only do it at that end, just like by a little bit, and you can keep on doing it by a little bit, and you'll be appropriate, enough to be able to deal with the situation. And, you won't get caught in the middle and backed into a corner until you reach the door slam phase, where you really can't deal with it anymore because it got over the top and you couldn't do anything appropriate in between, or you would look like a crazy person. So, let's see. So, like I said, they have TE for the very first function, and I just saw a movie that had an ESTJ on it, and that was the whole plot of it. It's really interesting because it works together. They're saying whatever they think, and they're really blunt and everything. with their FE, which is a very last function, which is the one they put out there to be friendly, but they really don't care about it. So they're kind of always playing on that. They'll do stuff that's FE, but they're just kind of like maybe mess with people with the FE sometimes too. And like I was watching this program also that has an ESTJ that he's going and helping restaurants that are about to, kick the bucket. And it was in Chile, and he's an ESTJ, and he'll do that, saying he comes in all nice, and because they have SE for their for their second function, they seem very polite and low key, and all of a sudden he uses SE, and his FE he's using, to pick up on what they're feeling, but then he'll just kind of blast them, but kindly, and he'll end up, helping the whole relationship thing also, and which is a lot of what is involved in the problems that they're having in the restaurants a lot of times. So they don't take the FE seriously. They can put it on or take it off, and they'll use that to their advantage in what they're doing. So they have kind of a real simplicity to them as far as the feelings go, because of the FI, I guess, but I don't think it's entirely due to the conscious thing. That's either, okay, well, we're going in order here, okay? So we have T, which is the first function, and as I was going to say on this movie, tell me 7, see how I wandered there, but this lady was just really blunt, and people really liked that about her, but then she got into huge trouble, and she's like, me, my big mouth, and that's something that ENTJs, like a new ENTJ, really have a problem with, like, because there's like been literally no space between like what is in their brain and what they're saying, which again can be a good thing or a bad thing, and it's probably a good criteria for being able to see how mature an ESTJ is by how much space there is between what's in their brain and what they say, because it really is a gift, but of course you have to, a gift can also be a huge problem. So let's see, the second function is the SI. So with the SI, there's a certain way that things must be done. They're into tradition. They have a very good memory, and they're good at details. So you often see like ESTJs in management. I've read that ENTJs often are like the really higher up ones that are like leading, because they have the NI. You have to be really visionary to be, in the upper things. And then the ESTJs are really good at the mid-level leadership, because they really love it when there's already rules in place. They kind of really don't want to be at the top having to make the rules. They want the rules to already be enforced. Like, that's their happy place. They like to have the rules already there and be able to enforce them. They really, 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 really enjoy that. And it kind of can go according to cultures too, because the TE DOMs in a low context culture, like in this country, are going to be a little different than the TE DOMs in a high context culture. The low context cultures, they really, if you have two people having an exchange, let's say I'm saying something and you're listening to me, if you don't understand in the low context culture the way that the culture is here in this country, then it was my fault because I didn't explain it well enough. Whereas in a high context culture, if we're having an exchange and you don't understand, it's your fault because you didn't pay close enough attention to what I was saying. The people that the ESTJs in the low context and high context culture, not the one here, the high context culture, it has a lot more of an FE. Those cultures have a lot more of an FE bent, so they're not quite as blunt, as offensive and defensive, like, you might say in your face, as one that from this country with more of an individualistic culture would be. And they're also raised, because that's your responsibility, is to pay attention, being the observer, the listener. They are more trained in NI kind of things than an ESTJ from the low context culture, like from this kind of culture in this country, would be. So there's not as much of a difference. in the high context cultures to an INFJ as there is in a low context culture. I feel like the low context cultures are very, very TE. We'll just say it that way. Also, and we will get back to doing them in order. That's my lack of TE showing here. But I just wanted to say one thing, and that is that, I read online about an INFJ that had an ESTJ father. So, you know how as INFJs, we need a good amount of time, and I'll even have to like pencil it in because I'm a 7, and that's the thing I have to look out for. Being an INFJ 7 is that I will be like, I need to process something, but because I'm feeling anxious or something, I'll get into a lot of activity and forget that I'm an introvert, and then it'll just get me more and more uptight because, you know, I just got too much work piling up in there. So I have to take time, and every INFJ has to do that. You have to take time to just reflect, and that's where your real work is getting done. But you look like you're doing nothing on the outside. To an ESTJ, for example, you look like you're doing nothing. In fact, probably most of what we do. Well, you know, it reaches a certain point of maturity where it shows on the outside, but it takes a while. Because it has to get worked out inside first. So whereas the ESTJs are just like, I would say TE is kind of a just do it kind of function. Which, as you see, that's very typical of the culture here in this country. That's what I was saying, it's very TE. Anyway, his father would like always be finding him tasks to do, and why? He was being considerate in his own way, in his ESTJ way, because that is what an ESTJ wants. They want to feel useful. They want to have a task that they're doing so that they can feel useful and they can feel good about themselves. So that is something to keep in mind with an ESTJ, to just maybe, try to maybe communicate the difference a little bit of that you've got a lot of stuff going on in there, and under the surface, sometimes if you're sitting there and it looks like you're doing nothing, you're not. I'm going to sit here for an hour and it's going to look like I'm doing nothing, but I'm not. I'm doing all kinds of really cool stuff. Just can't see it. But also to realize that maybe you just need to emphasize, emphasize to them the function and the usefulness of your NI. Just explain to them. And I've had to do this also like with ESFPs even, because I do have it, but it's kind of almost not there sometimes over the top, being in the 4th position, that you need to give them examples of where you knew something's going to happen or whatever, and it did happen, and how you could feel that this was this way underneath the surface, and then this happened, and that sort of thing, and emphasize things, tangible things to them that you are accomplishing, that sort of thing, to try to kind of bridge the gap there a little bit so they can maybe understand you and feel like they're related to you a little better. Okay, so going back to our boring TE sequencing. SI, like I said, that's about details and all that sort of thing and tradition and everything. And like I said, they just love there to be a tradition and love there to be a whole system already in place, and then they love to be the person that comes in and enforces that. I would almost say that they can tend to like forcing people to do things, making people do things. It's kind of a management it's a management skill, which can be good or bad. I know that there was a little ESTJ girl in my 6th grade class, and she was going through, there was some family turmoil going on in her household, and so I was just like trying to understand where she was coming from, be sympathetic and everything, but I mean, she came on pretty strong, what I'm saying, and so the little girls would play, and the little boys would play, in their own groups, at recess, and so we would always make forts, right, or like we would do different stuff, but anyway, there would always be the point at the beginning when we're deciding, what are we going to do today at recess, and she would have an idea. And of course, for her being an ESTJ, and I did not understand this back then, but the whole big thrill of it would be managing it and being in charge, which she had, a skill for, and she was eager to use it. And me being an INFJ, I was trying to bring harmony to the group. And so I would think of an idea, because I had the strong FE, which she wasn't taking seriously, right? Being an ESTJ, she probably, well, I don't know how much she was using or not using it, but anyway, I was picking up on what everybody in the class wanted, all the girls. And then I would think of something that had a little bit of something for everybody. And so more often than not, mine got picked and hers didn't get picked. And so she would get mad and accuse me of, you're just trying to start a fight and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm trying to start a fight? I thought of something that makes everybody happy. What is starting a fight about that, you know? And she would, you know, just get all mad. And like, I tried to call her to apologize, to try to get along with her, and she wouldn't even answer the phone and stuff like this. So, and I would get headaches over it back then, you know, being an INFJ, you're just so sensitive to other people's feelings and everything. And it was a little bit of a difficult thing for me, but yeah, that's an ESTJ. And actually, in that same grade, I had an ESTJ teacher that didn't like me. And then I also had an ESTJ boy also in my class. And believe it or not, there's only 7 people in my class, and there's that many ESTJs in there, so that was a fun year. But yeah, and the little ESTJ boy was, he actually hurt me, like grabbed my arm and twisted it, yeah. So I had to like stand up to him and stuff. And my best friend went and told her mother about it, who then admired me. But anyway, yeah, you definitely have to present yourself in a strong manner. It's going to come to that at some point with an ESTJ, because they're not going to read your little messages. That was going to bring me to another point, but now I don't remember what it was. Oh, that is a very interesting thing about the ESTJs, is that FI, that FI that's almost not there, and that's the 4th function, so we're going in order now. The FI that's almost not there, or it's way over the top. And it, like in the example I just gave of a little girl, and I've seen this also with a relative that is an ESTJ, and this happens. When they get offended, or I assume that it happens on good feelings also, I don't know. But like all of a sudden they're like a little kid. They'll like burst into tears or have to go, and it's like this process that it started, and once it started, they can't stop it. And like with this relative, I remember I said something, and I wasn't meaning, you know, I was just presenting a fact. But he was emotionally connected to the fact he just presented that was different than what I knew was true. And I was just having a friendly debate with him, right? You know, like, big deal. But anyway, he overflowed, and he got his feelings hurt and took off for another room. And I said, oh, I didn't mean anything by it. He said, I know you didn't. You know, he knew that I didn't mean anything by it, but it had just triggered something. And once it started, it just had to run its full course, and then he gonna be fine. So it's kind of an interesting little interesting thing, and I think that's probably what's happening with a little girl in my class also. You know, they just can get triggered, and then it's not necessarily that they actually feel offended, but it's just kind of this cycle that has to go through or something. Going on to the 5th function, which is TI. This is the function that they are really suppressing with their TE. I wish I could remember what I was going to say. Something had been I hate that when that happens. Anyway, so TI is the big picture, but they are suppressing that with their TE. To them, they really do love to stick to situational logic. This is true in this situation. This is what works in this situation. And they're not really wanting to think about the big picture. They can, and it's there. It's always there in the background. So, you know, they're very analytical people, but it's not something that they like to stay in. I mean, it's being suppressed by their TE. So, I mean, it does have the basis of that, but they don't really I haven't really talked with any ESTJs about TI things, and I think I would really like to do that now that I'm thinking about it, just to see how that is in them. I'm not sure. I really haven't spent a lot of time around ESTJs, to tell you the truth. I have had some contact and everything, as you see, but yes, and I had an ESTJ friend also, and when I met this friend, I was still barely a teenager, and people always say be yourself, but for an INFJ, that's a pretty difficult thing, because it's really hard for us to figure out who we are, because it's hard for us to tune into our FI, and somehow we're able to relate to everyone, like in some way, like have something in common with everyone somehow. I don't know. Of course, everybody has that, but it's we're talking about a matter of degrees here, and yeah, it's a pretty interesting experience about that. So yeah, I did get back into the proverbial, the thing that can happen with INFJs, and I kind of had to back off there for a while because I got backed into a corner. But if you don't start off right, it's just gonna snowball, and it wasn't a really close relationship, so it kind of left me a little limited about how I could react, and it was also another culture, so I had to deal with, well, is this something that is something from this culture, or is this actually like what it looks like to me? And so there were a lot of other things going on. It just wasn't just because this person wasn't ESTJ, but that was definitely a factor in it. That could have avoided some problems, I think, if I had known about it. So going to their sixth function, which is the SE, and this is something that I think that you especially need to be aware of with young ESTJs, because they're not really aware of it at all at that point, and it can kind of get out of hand, and it's there, but they are not really able to control it really very well. It's just the same as like with ESFJs. So like I said, that's the assertive aggressive thing. So you have to be really aware of that, especially with the young ESTJs, because that can just pop out all of a sudden there, and you didn't even see it coming, and you don't expect it, because they got that SI so strong, which is so meek and mild and everything, and then all of a sudden, you get that SE, and it's like, whoa, it can be pretty offensive, but they are definitely very good, like I said, at pushing through, and since the FE is not something they really value, they're really very good at accomplishing a lot. They're just made for accomplishing, tangible things. They're very, very good at it. And then the last function, which was the FE that we already discussed, that they don't really value, but they can turn on the charm. They can be very, harmonious, shall we say. And again, like I said, this can vary according to whether it's a high context or low context culture. And so to get along with them, you always have to make sure that you do have the warm factor to it, even though it seems kind of counterintuitive with them somehow. But you definitely always have to have that, because that's, what they put out there to show their friendliness. So you have to make sure that you do it back, and that kind of oils the gears. And with them seeming so, sometimes you wouldn't think of that, but you do make sure that you still, put the hearts and give them hugs and do all this stuff and everything, because that's gonna keep things going smoothly with them. And when they say things and everything, just don't really take it so seriously, because as an INFJ, we really tend to, like I said, we think about what we are going to say, and we really value the FE, and we try to make sure that we're not going to say something that's offensive, and we think through the analytical value of something, and this is what we naturally do, good or bad, right? But the ESTJs, they just say what they're thinking in the moment, you know. And it's not necessarily like what they truly think. It's just the thought that came to their mind in that moment. They haven't necessarily thought about it. They haven't weighed all the pros and cons and everything. It's not the finished product that they're giving to you. It's not their life philosophy. It's just a thought that was in their brain at the moment. And so it's almost more an invitation to have a discussion with you. Like, well, what do you think about it? And why do you think that and everything? Do you know what I mean? For them to go from there and pick up, figure out what it is that they actually think about it personally, which would be the TI. So, like, don't take it so seriously when they do what they say about what they think, because it's not a solidified thing at that point. It's just coming out their mouth. For us, it seems solidified because we only say something when it's already solidified naturally, but it's not the way that it is for them. So you can't take it at face value and such. So, gosh, there was something really interesting that I was going to say about estjs, but oh well, I haven't remembered it, so there you have it. If I do remember it, then maybe I'll make another little short 30-second video about it, or maybe comment on the bottom. Anyway, I hope that you enjoy this video. I hope that if you are an INFJ and you're around estjs, that it kind of gives you a little bit of a feel of what you can do with them, so that there's mutual understanding and appreciation, and that you can enjoy each other more. And I think that's about it. Bye.